Okay, welcome everyone to another Propaganda in Focus talk. It's time with CJ Hopkins, American expat writer and Übermensch living in Germany. I'm glad we finally had this time to talk. I know we've been going back and forth over the past few months, and very glad to hear you're well. And for those of you who are a bit unfamiliar with contemporary drama as a high art, it is outside of international political theater. CJ is a playwright and novelist and has been producing output for decades now. His most notable works are Horse Country, Screw Machine Eye Candy, and The Extremists, which have been produced on stages around the world. His columns, too, have been published in numerous journals, have been translated into at least 5 languages. And he now has a new novel coming out this summer, I believe. CJ, welcome.
Thanks so much for inviting me on, Tim.
Really glad to have you. Before we dive into some of these questions, can you just give us a quick update on the latest legal actions?
Yeah, why don't I do the short version of it? I think that most people are relatively familiar with the background of my case. Yeah, I was prosecuted here in Germany for tweeting the cover art of one of my books, which was critical of the COVID measures. And the cover art shows a medical mask with a very faint swastika behind it. Name of the book is The Rise of the New Normal Reich, and it's a collection of my essays from 2020 and 2021, during the height of the COVID era, if that's what we're calling it now. Anyway, I put a couple of tweets out using the cover art of my book. And long story short, I was criminally investigated and eventually prosecuted. The book was banned by Amazon in 3 European countries, including Germany. Reported to the Federal Criminal Police Office and the German Secret Services. I went to trial. My first trial, it was January of last year, I think, and I was acquitted there at my first trial. The judge followed German law. A lot of people don't really understand German law when it comes to Nazi symbols. There is a Nazi symbol ban, but of course there are exceptions to posting or publicizing things with swastikas or other Nazi symbols on them. And of course there are, because you couldn't teach a history class or, publish a history book with a swastika on it, or show a Quentin Tarantino movie, or show a Rammstein video. Anyway, my use falls under those exceptions, and the first judge recognized that. She didn't like me very much, but she acquitted me. She followed the law. The Berlin state prosecutor was not happy with that verdict, and so they appealed it, which they can do in Germany. So it took me to trial again in appeals court, and the appeals court just summarily found me guilty. So I'm now technically a hate criminal in Germany. After that second verdict, my lawyer and I had filed a complaint with the Constitutional Court of Germany, which is basically Germany's Supreme Court. And so our case is now sitting there at Germany's Supreme Court. It's been logged and filed, and we're waiting for a response from the Constitutional Court.
Wow. It's just a twilight zone. Like, is it even, I mean, is it possible to even use the term fascism?
Well, yeah, I tend not to use the term fascism. I tend to talk about totalitarianism, because fascism evokes specifically the Nazis and Mussolini and a specific ideology. I know a lot of people don't like the term totalitarianism, but I do, because it's broad enough to encompass various systems, including the system that I see developing and evolving in the world right now.
Yeah, it's probably a good umbrella term to refer both to the far right and the far left.
And any other type of totalitarian system in between. A point that I've often made, when I talk about I talk a lot about I've written and I've talked a lot about cults, and I think I think basically a totalitarian system, any totalitarian system, is kind of a cult writ large on a societal scale. And the inverse is also true. If you look at the way cults function, you're basically seeing totalitarian systems in a microcosm.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's why I use the term.
Yeah, I think it's apt, especially today in this sort of global technocratic order coming into place.
Yeah, I've made the point a lot that when I talk about totalitarianism, when I'm writing about the new normal Reich or global capitalist totalitarianism, it's not 20th century totalitarianism. It doesn't look like that. It's yeah it doesn't function like that. Yes, there are similarities and there are common elements that are true of all totalitarian systems. But I'm not talking about a repeat or a resurgence of 20th century totalitarianism that everybody recognizes and is used to.
Right. Over the past over the past number of years, 4 or 5 years or so, I think, we've all been standing aghast as witnesses of the sort of bizarre reification of, fascism or totalitarianism in Europe. Um, Given the strong laws against symbols of Germany's past flirtations with totalitarianism, I'm sure we've all imagined it was by now just some kind of abstraction that lingered in our collective memories of our grandparents. I think, that fascism would never be a concern, especially for us, the offspring of our parents and grandparents since the fall of the Berlin Wall. The heirs of a world, it seems to me, that rid itself, perhaps naively, of fascists. Can you take us back to that time since the rollout of the Corona menace, trademark Corona, when you began to feel or maybe recognize the faint inklings of the reappearance of, say, the ghost of totalitarianism? Describe what you were recognizing that maybe triggered this sense and what you thought might be or could be or should be done about it.
Well, sure. It's pretty specific. It was March and April of 2020. Back when the first couple of columns that I wrote, when the coronavirus stories, it wasn't even COVID then yet, when the first stories started breaking, I wrote a couple of columns and they were really just humorous columns because I just thought, okay, this is just a mass hysteria over a virus and everyone's overreacting and I'll just make fun of it. And then I started getting more serious in March and April. And the reason I did is basically what I watched was the entire global, or at least, Western media apparatus, propaganda apparatus, began pumping out just the same insane propaganda, same authoritarian propaganda, just in complete synchronization. And it was there was nothing subtle about it. I often remind people at that time I compiled I think it was 257 tweet thread. And all I did was I collected headlines and articles from the mainstream media in Western countries all over the world and just collected them as a thread. This was this was to document the rollout of the new normal. A lot of people think, when I talk about the new normal or the new normal Reich, a lot of people think that I made up that term. I didn't. That term was disseminated by the Western media slash propaganda apparatus, government officials, global health officials. There was just story after story after story announcing to us, hey, the life that you knew is over. We are entering a new normal. And they repeated the phrase over and over and over again.
Mm.
And the message was unmistakably clear. It was, we're in a state of emergency. You will shut up and follow orders, or you will be punished. This is the time people probably don't remember because everything gets memory hold so quickly. But people were being fitted with ankle bracelets. Police goon squads were wrestling people in Spain down in the street because they went outside without permission.
Yeah.
In a lot of Europe, you had to have papers. You actually had to have permission papers to leave your house and go outside. In the States, they were filling up skating parks with sand, and roping off and dismantling children's playgrounds. And there were, robot dogs patrolling the streets in Asia and on and on. If people go and it's still on the internet, people can go and dig out that 257 tweet thread and take a look at it. You see government leader after government leader announcing, we will do martial law if
Yeah.
we need to. Macron came out and said, I will rule by decree.
Yeah.
The message was unmistakably clear. And it was, we're changing the rules of reality, and all of those democratic rights that you thought you had, they're over.
Yeah.
So that got my attention.
The 257, you said it was a 257 page tweet.
No, it's a thread, how they do on,
Okay.
on Twitter. You can, just thread your tweets so one tweet follows the next. And then there's a thing on Twitter where where you can turn it into I forget what they call it, but they turn it into one single document.
Uh,
Also, Off Guardian, the online outlet Off Guardian, if people are familiar with that, they actually turned it into two pieces. They split it up and they published two pieces, which is basically that same compilation, that 257 tweet thread.
I remember I remember reading that. That was quite a while ago. I'm gonna have to dig
Yep.
back into that.
It was March and April of 2020, so we're
Yeah.
talking 5 years ago now.
You know, one of the greatest difficulties, it seems to me, is figuring out how to deal with this like willful blindness and blind obedience to unjustified forms of state coercion. Piers and I, we sometimes have to remind ourselves that we're working in extraordinary times that just beg for deeper analysis of the massive military-grade psyop being perpetrated on populations. And there's really no shortage of work that needs to be done, and that these are really the best of times and the worst of times. So, taking you back just a bit, to what extent have you been reminded over the past 4 or 5 years of the seeming prophetic insights that can be gleaned in your play, The Extremist? Kind of thinking about the character Norm, expert on anti-terrorism who wants to stamp out extremism by goading viewers of, issues in focus to focus only on the facts offered up by the centers of power. I'm kind of asking this question because all freedom-loving people, and we should be reminded, we're urged to, during this COVID era, quote, trust the science, that we're all in this together, and we should, get the vax, quote unquote, as Anthony Fauci and friends went on ad nauseum. And if we didn't follow, we were all cast as nutcases and extremists. What do you think?
Um, well, it's funny talking about my plays because my plays are not traditional plays at all. There are actually no characters in the plays. The Extremists is it's one of my favorite plays. Really difficult play to do for the actors. Bless them. The two roles are basically masks that they wear. I described the play, I think, at one point as what happens is two poetic terrorists come into the theater and destroy the play that they're doing. Basically, they use these masks and play with various manipulative techniques to try to sort of cut through the programming that we are all conditioned with and that we walk into any room with and we walk into the theater with. I think my first love was the theater. I spent a lot of my life working in the theater. The reason is I think the theater has a power that a lot of other art forms do not have. It goes back to the roots of theater, which is basically church. You know, it's a reality laboratory. And what what the two poetic terrorists, as I call them, are doing in the extremists is, first of all, trying to short circuit our minds enough that they open and begin to see things. And they're trying to use manipulative tools to show us how the manipulative tools work. I don't know if you're familiar with Bertolt Brecht and his theories and his the Verfremdungseffect and alienation effect. Brecht was a big influence on me, obviously. So was Artaud. Brecht, the way Brecht was a communist, and the way he approached theater was with the understanding that theater is dangerous. It's a means, it's a propaganda apparatus, and it's a used as a means of mesmerizing and stupefying the audience and the masses. And so his answer to this analysis was, we never turn the stupefaction machine on in the theater. Always do something during the performance to remind the audience you're just watching a show. Yeah, never turn the magic power of the theater on. My approach in the theater has been different. I see the same propaganda machine, basically mind control machine that Brecht saw. But my approach has been, no, let's go ahead and turn it on. Yeah, let's not be afraid of it. Let's turn it on and let's take it apart while it's running so that we can all begin to understand what it is and how it is shaping our perceptions and how it is basically generating reality for us. So I don't know if that makes sense to people, but
Hmm.
that's kind of the aesthetic of all of my work in the theater. And the theater is a place where that machine can be played with, can be experimented with in a way that it can't on film and it can't in prose in a book.
Mhm.
The theater offers us that opportunity. Unfortunately, it's plays like mine don't get done very often anymore. I was fortunate to have the run that I did early in my career.
Have you been influenced at all by Arthur Miller? I'm thinking of like Death of a Salesman.
Probably as a very young man when I read Miller. Miller's pretty traditional, and I'm not.
So how would you besides Brecht, what do you think of Theater of the Absurd, Edward Albee?
Yeah, obviously, as in Albie's Virginia Woolf, I think is, if not the greatest play of the second half of the 20th century, it's one of them. That play is absolutely a masterpiece, and of course, the European absurdists are a huge influence on me. Beckett and Ionesco and Genet and what have you. Yeah,
Hmm. Have you ever had a chance to see the staged performance of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I haven't. No, I've never seen it on stage.
Mhm. Yeah, I saw the film for the first time about 20 years ago. I was just blown away by
Yeah, it
yeah.
it masterpiece.
This brings me to a question about symbols. I was preparing for this talk. I was thinking about Walter Lippmann's The Phantom Public, in which he pointed out that symbols, once they do their job, they provide a very powerful emotional handle by which leaders can move their people. I wonder if the swastika has provided those in power who seek to suppress free speech with the opportunity to move and manipulate the people to, try to obliterate logic and reason and the free exchange of ideas in public discourse.
Yeah, I think it has to a great degree. I mean, it's a cliche, and a lot of people have criticized my book cover and my references to the Nazis exactly on those grounds, which is come on, CJ, this is one of the biggest cliches that's around. It doesn't really mean anything anymore, and to a degree, I think that that is true. Nonetheless, I think I think we have to be able to compare new totalitarian forms to the Nazis and to the Soviet Union, for that matter. If you want to go that way, I tend to go with the Nazis. They are the Nazis remain the best known, most recognized example of totalitarianism that we have. And we need to be able to make those comparisons. I mean, you were using the word fascism, and I use this word also. I tend to use it I think it's the third definition in Merriam-Webster. I use it in an informal sense. One definition of fascism just means extreme authoritarianism.
Hmm.
It doesn't refer to any political party or what have you. And again, the swastika and the Nazi symbology evokes that type of extreme authoritarianism. So, yeah, it's overused and it's abused. One of the ironies of my case, I brought it up at my second trial. I was prosecuted for basically publicizing an image that contained a swastika. Shortly before my second trial, Der Spiegel, which is the huge, internationally known German magazine, they published a cover with a big giant swastika on the front of it, covered with a German flag, and they were referring to the AfD party and warning that the AfD party is a new type of totalitarianism.
Mm.
So basically, Der Spiegel created a piece of art which was exactly the same concept of the artwork on my book cover, which was created by the brilliant Anthony Freda, by the way. So Der Spiegel did exactly the same thing. And then Stern, another big German magazine, published a big cover with, another swastika on it referring to the AfD. And German officials make this comparison all the time.
Oh.
And so did German mainstream media. Compare the AfD or whoever they don't like to the Nazis.
Hmm.
So this happens. It's not an aberration. It's done all the time. It's only a problem when you're comparing the current government to the Nazis.
Right.
That's when it becomes a problem, and when an author like me gets prosecuted for doing it. So
Well, nevertheless, it looks like you have really good, strong evidence for total innocence. There's precedence there.
yeah,
Everyone's
it hasn't helped me so far.
not yet. Lastly, you've got a new book coming out this summer. Can you give us maybe a brief synopsis and tell us a bit about what motivated Zone 23?
Yeah, actually, I've got two books coming out. The first book, and they're both. If people are not familiar with Skyhorse Publishing in New York, they're the publishers of Bobby Kennedy's book and a lot of other, just big bestsellers and great stuff. They're kind of an outlaw publishing company that publishes controversial stuff from all over the political spectrum, and they publish work that none of the other establishment publishers would dare to publish. Skyhorse is publishing my next collection of essays. I had published my essay collections myself, published three of them. And Skyhorse is bringing out the next one. It'll be out April 15th or at some point in April. Matt Taibbi wrote the foreword for it, and it's my columns from 2022 to 2024. So tail end of the COVID stuff up to just the end of last year. That'll be out in April 15th. Zone 23 is my dystopian novel, which I actually self-published in 2017. That is a new edition of that is being published by Arcade Publishing, which is an imprint of Skyhorse, right? So they're bringing out this new edition in hardcover in July of this year. Zone 23 is it's a big, fat 500-page, densely written, hilariously funny, and horribly disturbing novel. I have often joked and apologized to people and say, like, I'm really sorry for publishing this. I didn't know they were going to use it as a blueprint. Um, it's it's basically set in a fictional dystopian future, although no one really knows what time period it is anymore. It's sort of a post-catastrophic future, officially 600 years in the future. And it takes place in a corporate controlled society where all forms of dissent and nonconformity have been pathologized. There are, and the human race is being genetically corrected. Um, yeah, there are basically three classes of people in this society. There are the normals, which are most people, and these are people over the age of 30, who were born before the genetic correction began. They all have this defective gene because all of humanity, it has been discovered that all of humanity has a defective gene. I'll give people a moment to reflect on that, what it means if all of humanity has a defective gene. So anyway, the normals, they all have this defective gene, and they were born before the genetic correction began, so they're heavily medicated. And the medication, it keeps them from becoming aggressive and offensive and what have you. The younger generation, the under 30s, are the clear generation or the clarion generation. And they've all been genetically corrected to weed out their aggressive tendencies. Of course, they're capable of murder, mass murder, but it doesn't stem from any type of hatred or aggression. It's just something that needs to be done. The third class of people are the antisocials, and the antisocials are resistant to the medication that the normals all take. And so, unfortunately, they all have to be herded into these quarantine zones, which are surrounded by big cement walls with concertina wire on the top. That might be familiar to some people if you think of those images of the big cement slabs with a concertina wire up on the top. And so they live in these quarantine zones. Um, and are guarded because they're resistant to the medication. So yeah, it's a long setup. The story follows two protagonists, one of which is an antisocial inside Zone 23, Quarantine Zone 23, whose girlfriend has become accidentally pregnant. And of course, antisocials are not allowed to create more children. Because this just spreads, the defective gene. And the other protagonist is a normal woman who who has just become pregnant with one of the clear fetuses,
Mm.
babies. And it follows both of their journeys, which is why it's so long.
So her child will be hybrid then.
Yes, yep. Her child, went through the genetic correction procedure, and it seems something about that has triggered something in her, and so she's having a crisis about that. I don't want
And
to give it all away.
I'm with you. I'm with you. That sounds, yeah, it does sound like a blueprint in many ways. Looking forward to reading that when it's out. I believe it's sometime this summer it's coming out.
In in July, it's up now. It's available for pre-order now. People can pre-order it, which will make my publisher very happy. But yeah, it'll be out. I think July 15th is the publication date.
I'll put it on order.
Great.
Great talking with you.
It's a pleasure, Dan. I'm glad we could finally connect. Sorry for putting you off so long. I've really been hammered with this flu that's going around.
Yeah, I had that. I probably had the same thing last month, so I can empathize entirely.
Hmm.
Really appreciate you taking some time to come and talk.
The pleasure.
All right, CJ. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Take care.